What's going on? So today we are going to be reviewing the Air Jordan 5 Fire Red Black Tongue Replica versus Retail. Now, if you cannot tell, the replica pair is on the right. The replica pair is on the right. Now we're gonna get right into this. Again, I'm gonna give a little bit of lore about what's been going on with these replica 5s. They have been getting a lot better. Growing up, especially in those like mid 2010s, the early 2010s, replica 5s and just reps in general look like shit. Now they're evolving, and to be honest, this is the best 5s I've seen ever, to be quite honest with you. I saw that in the last video with the grapes, and I'm seeing that again with this. Even the metallics, they're already doing a really good job. So let's just, enough time wasting, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about some of the differences, some of the similarities. There are some differences. Again, when it comes to this, it's really just nitpicking, to be quite honest with you. So I'm just gonna mention the minor little details that I noticed, because that's really all it is. If you're looking at shape, they're getting the shape pretty accurate. As you can see, maybe the toe box on the retail pair is a little bit higher up. It looks a bit more sleek on this rep pair. And again, y'all let me know whatever differences y'all see that I don't see. I'm always open to that. But overall, these are really close. These are really close in my opinion. The red looks perfectly fine to me. It looks the same. If anything, maybe on the lining, it might be a little bit different. Barely, a slight hue difference. And the tongue also might seem a little bit, can't tell if it's shorter or taller, I'm not gonna lie. But the tongue does look slightly different on the retail pair compared to the rep, which is again right here. I'm not gonna lie, the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm confused I'm getting. You know, I have to just do this nitpicking, which I'll start doing here. So one of the things that I noticed is right here on the retail pair, as you can see, there is a gap in between that stitching. On the rep pair, you do not see that gap at all. You guys can see that pretty clearly. Also, something that I noticed is there's a little bit of tumbled leather on this back panel. I don't know if it was just my pair. I'm sure there's plenty of pairs with that issue or whatever, or feature. And on the retail pair, you can see a bit of that tumbled sort of leather. The 23 also looks pretty different, but I can't really pinpoint what it is exactly. Maybe the retail pair used more black. As you guys can see, this is the rep 23. This is the retail 23. So maybe it used more black. And honestly, again, y'all can say how y'all feel as well. I feel like it's more crisp on this retail, on this rep pair. Look at that. Compared to the retail, looks a little fuzzy, especially towards the end of this right here. You guys can see that compared to this rep pair. Let's try to see them side by side. So that's a feature that I noticed. Netting looks pretty similar to me. To be honest, paint looks fine. Paint seeps down here on the retail pair. It also seeps down on the rep. Maybe not as much, but it does definitely seep down there. The stitching on this rep pair does look really good, I won't lie. Another thing that I've constantly mentioned throughout a lot of my comparison videos is that Nike's stitching seems to have more holes, if that makes sense. I don't know if you guys can understand what I'm talking about, but through the stitching you can see these little holes, right? The rep doesn't necessarily do that as much, so that's kind of a difference. And you can see it from farther, at least in my eyes. So that's something that I noticed right here on this panel above the 23. I also noticed that on the retail pair, the stitching is a bit light, whereas compared to the rep, you can clearly see that stitching pretty obviously I'm sure you guys can see that difference, right? This just looks like a bunch of dots, and this you can clearly see the stitching. Also, this panel right here extends out way farther on the retail pair compared to the rep. I'm sure you guys can see that. It's almost touching this middle point of the 23 on the retail pair. As you guys can see, it goes all the way down right here towards the middle of the 23, whereas on the rep, it stops right here in front of the 2. To depict the most accuracy, these are the same size, which, you know, obviously things will vary or whatever, but, you know, just to try to get as clear assessment as possible, that's why that's been done. Something that I'm noticing, which is kind of crazy, is that on on these eyelets right here, you can see Nike didn't fully finish punching the holes out. I'm sure y'all can see that right there. Even on the top, you can definitely see that. Look how crisp the rep did in that aspect. There's not any like debris or any junk right there. You can literally see that. Even from far, you can kind of see that. So, I mean, there's a little bit right here, but overall, look at that. Nike, there's a whole like square that's undone. There's some junk right there. You know, classic Nike stuff. I noticed that there's a little bit of a different texture on the midsole that you can kind of see on the Nike pair. I don't know if you guys can kind of see that. It's a bit more textured compared to this rep pair. Maybe I'm tripping, but it does look a little bit different in my eyes. Let's see if we can kind of, this is another rep versus rep right here. I don't know if you guys can kind of see that. And to me, the most obvious factor that I noticed was the little shark teeth over here. Some people prefer it like that. I kind of like them sharper, but on the rep pair, you can see that they're kind of like not too sharp. And when you see the retail, you'll definitely be able to see the difference. So this is the rep, right? This is the retail. Look how much sharper those shark teeth are or whatever. Definitely a lot sharper. And now it's almost like you can't really unsee it. You can definitely see right there the difference. The front looks great. Again, I could very well be blind, but I feel like maybe the red is brighter on this rep pair, on the sole specifically, compared to the retail. Tongue looks fucking really close, man. Honestly, I don't really have much for that. I thought I would. I thought there was a difference. Maybe the rep tongue is a little bit taller. Again, rep tongues used to look like shit on the Jordan 5. It used to be so obvious. You could see it and you could be like, oh, dude, that's horrible. But now they're definitely advancing. Let's look at these eyelets to see if there's any more of that issue that I was sort of mentioning. This eyelet definitely looks better compared to the previous one. A little bit on the top over here, there's still some white. This is the rep. You know, it's there, just a little bit less. So yeah, that's something that I noticed. This panel right here also looks a bit more flat on the rep compared to the retail. I don't know if that fully makes sense, but it just looks a bit more flat. That's the best way I can describe it. You can also see these edges on the rep are a lot smoother compared to the retail. Over here, you can see it's just a bit more rough and a little sloppier in that aspect. Again, I believe you can kind of see the sharpness right here on the rep versus the retail. This one looks, again, a little bit duller, a little bit sharper on that retail pair. But honestly, like I said, we're just kind of nitpicking here. Everything else, like, it's almost like I'm struggling to find certain things. That's obviously due the the Nike Air on the back. We have not received the Nike Air on the back since about since the OGs, if I'm correct. I don't think these have ever dropped with the Nike Air on the back. So that's what, 90. So honestly, I don't know, bro. In terms of this, these look really, really accurate. If anything, this is gonna come as a surprise. Again, I have to make sure this is the rep pair. I'm not getting mixed up. Yeah. The swoosh and the Nike stitching on the back is a bit cleaner. The words are a little sloppy. Right here in Nike, you can kind of see the difference. It's a little sloppy, but the swoosh is absolutely crisp, as well as the words Nike Air. That's pretty crisp compared to the Nike version. But overall, I'm telling you, this version looks a lot cleaner and a lot more crisp. Again, with the material right here and the lining, you can definitely see the difference on the Nike pair compared to the rep. Looks a lot smoother, looks a lot cleaner. Almost, if you want to consider that, almost a little bit of a blue hue compared to this where it's just pure white. You can kind of see that. I tried using a good camera for you guys, so you should be able to see all that good stuff. Again, the bleeding from the paint down here is evident on both rep and retail. It also seems like the stitching is almost double the thickness on the retail compared to the rep. You can see it looks stitching, but it looks very thin, especially around this area. Also this gap right here, look at that. This is the rep, this is the retail. It's almost double in size, this gap right here. So, you know, just minor things like that are what kind of separates these two. Air Jordan looks, I mean, that's not even really worth looking at. I know sometimes I skip over certain things and I'll get a couple comments here and there, but usually if I skip over it, it's because it's so close that it's like, is it even worth going over it? I think I mixed them up right now. Let me double check the shark teeth. But yeah, overall, I mean, like I said, these are really, really close. Maybe this is a little bit yellow. And I know at one point the rep pairs that were coming out were more yellow, like they were literally yellowing on the sole. So I don't know if that's still an issue. Also, my rep pair appears to be dirty. I don't know who tried those on. But even the retail pair looks a little yellow, to be honest. It's like a little bit, nothing too crazy. Do I think these are worth $230? A little side note, no. Not the way they've been doing it. You can see all these glue stains, and you know, the quality was better than on the grapes, at least in my opinion. But $230, I don't know, man. It's getting harder and harder to justify that price point. You know, it really, really is. Another thing that I'm noticing right now, this is the rep pair. You can kind of see, look at this little side panel, this little triangle right here. Whereas on the retail pair, it almost doesn't even look close. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me try to figure that out. You guys can kind of see this panel. I guess it just looks bigger. That little triangle, if you will, looks a lot bigger on the retail compared to the rep. It's a lot smaller. Let me try to put them side by side. I don't know if you can see that, but overall, man, honestly, there's not too much difference between the two. They're both very close. At this point, it just really depends on price point. And since these are dropping in value and, you know, now there's fucking sales for them or whatever, you know, that does sort of help people who don't want to pay $230. I mean, these sat for a while, which is very good for true collectors who want to enjoy and appreciate the shoe. But overall, I mean, very close comparison. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.